Hello viewers, welcome back to our series of lectures on elementary quantum mechanics. Today we will take up molecular orbital theory and we will try to limit ourselves to the treatment of homonuclear diatomic molecules. The session is planned as follows. To begin with, we will review what we did in the previous sessions, and thereafter we will try to see that how do we extend the molecular orbital theory to homonuclear diatomic molecules of say period 1 and period 2. In this process, what we will do is we will recall the salient features of MO theory that we developed for hydrogen molecule ion, and then thereafter we will see that how do we generate different kind of molecular orbitals for homonuclear diatomic molecules, and then we will try to see that how do we kind of accommodate different electrons into these molecular orbitals to generate the molecular orbital energy level diagrams or molecular orbital configurations. And then towards the end we will try to sum up what we do today. Okay, let us make a beginning by recalling what we did in the previous sessions. We actually introduced ourselves to the quantum mechanical approach to molecular systems, because you will recall that in this whole series we started with model systems, we came down to atomic systems, and then thereafter we graduated ourselves to molecular systems. So, in the previous two episodes we focused on to hydrogen molecule ion, a molecular system, and we discussed about that how do we handle such kind of systems in terms of quantum mechanics. Then we formally defined that is how do we kind of look into a hydrogen molecule ion, that means there are two nuclei, a single electron there, and for such a system how do we formulate a Schrodinger wave equation for that. And then since this equation happened to be quite complicated one, we resorted to some means of solving it, and in this process we did talk something about the approximation methods, and we used variation theorem as one of the tools to solve the problem of hydrogen molecule ion. And in this to affect this, what we had to do was we had to take a trial wave function which was devised by using LCAO, that is linear combination of atomic orbitals. Then having done that, so the outcome of that we got wave functions, and then we towards the end we tried to visualize how do these wave function look like, what do they convey to us, what is the kind of energy expression. So, all that has been done in the previous two sessions on hydrogen molecule ion. Now, we are equipped enough to extend what you learned so far to homonuclear diatomic molecules, and that too of period 1 and period 2. To make it little convenient for ourselves, let us again recall a few more things here. The salient features of hydrogen molecule ion, that is we remember that in case of hydrogen molecule ion we learnt that the atomic orbitals of the constituent atoms, in that case there are two hydrogen atoms which are being talked about, they combine to generate new types of orbitals, and we call them as molecular orbitals. Essentially the atomic orbitals of constituent atoms combine together to give us molecular orbitals, and then these molecular orbitals are spread over the whole molecule. They are not confined to atoms like atomic orbitals, but they are spread over the whole molecule. And also we learnt that the number of molecular orbitals what you obtain is equal to the number of atomic orbitals which are contributing to the formation of molecular orbitals. Say in the case of hydrogen molecule ion, you remember that we used only two atomic orbitals, say one as A and one as B, and in the process we got two molecular orbitals, and out of these two molecular orbitals, one was a bonding molecular orbital of a lower energy, and the other one was an anti-bonding molecular orbital of higher energy. We will not get into details of that because we have done that already. Just for sake of it, I am trying to recall it here. And what we had was that essentially the atomic orbital of atom 1 of 2, the two combined together to give you the molecular orbitals. The one is a bonding molecular orbital which is of energy lower than that of the constituent species there, and an anti-bonding molecular orbital which has got energy higher than that of the constituent species there. So, that is what we have done so far in case of hydrogen molecule ion. Now, suppose we want to extend this molecular orbital theory to homonuclear diatomic molecules, what do we do? What do we do is that before we proceed further, let me make a statement here, which I did earlier also, that is, the hydrogen molecule ion plays the same role in understanding molecular structure as played by hydrogen atom in understanding atomic structure. What it means is, that is, if I want to talk about atomic structure, so hydrogen atom serves as a reference point for me. If I know hydrogen atom structure, that can be kind of used to understand the structure of multi electron systems, okay, because hydrogen atom is the single electron system. Similarly, if I want to learn about the structure of molecules, then hydrogen molecule ion with two nuclei and one single electron there, that actually plays the same role there, because that is the starting point for us. So, whatever we learned there, that can be used as a basis for learning the molecular structure of larger systems there. Okay. So, that is the background we have with us. Now, to understand the molecular structure of homonuclear diatomic molecules, the approach is as follows, that is, we first construct different molecular orbitals by combining the available atomic orbitals. And in this context, what happens is that once you generate the molecular orbitals, then the constituent electrons of the electrons of the constituent atoms are then accommodated into these molecular orbitals. So, that is a kind of approach we follow. And in this process of accommodating electrons into these molecular orbitals, we have to follow two basic principles. First one is, that is, we have to adhere to Pauli's exclusion principle, which says that is no more than 2 electrons can occupy a given orbital, and of course, the spins of these 2 electrons must be paired. So, that is the first requirement. And secondly, we must ensure that the Hund's rule of maximum multiplicity also is kind of followed. That is, if what it means is that if I got a degenerate set of molecular orbitals, that means there are more than one molecular orbital having same energy. In that case, if I have to fill the electrons will be filled singly to each individual molecular orbital before they are paired up. So, there are two basic things. I am sure that you all remember it from your understanding of atomic structure. Same things hold true even in the context of molecular electronic distribution or electronic configuration. So, that is the kind of approach we are going to follow. Okay. Now, let us see that how do we describe the bonding of homonuclear diatomic molecules formed by elements of period 1. Now, this is where period 1 basically has got 2 elements with us, one is hydrogen and second is helium. So, if I want to talk about the diatomic molecules made from these 2, probably I do not have to go any further, I can just use what I learned from my system of hydrogen molecule ions. So, what do we do is, say if I want to talk about, let us say, example of hydrogen molecule. In case of hydrogen molecules, there are 2 hydrogen atoms are there, they are combining. So, there is 1s of hydrogen atom number 1, 1s orbital of the second hydrogen atom, the 2 combine together to give me 2 molecular orbitals. One is my sigma 1s or sigma 1g, 1 sigma g is a sigma orbital, sigma molecular orbital there, and this is 1 sigma u, it is an antibonding molecular orbital. And essentially, since each of these hydrogen atoms have got only 1 valence electron, so the 2 put together give me 2 electrons, and the 2 electrons when have to be filled. So, we go in a way that we essentially we even use that alpha principle, that is, we start with the lower energy level. So, we put first electron there, second also goes over there, and then in accordance with our requirement of Pauli's principle and Hund's rules of multiplicity, we find that the molecular orbital electron configuration of hydrogen molecule comes out to be 1 sigma Gu, 1 sigma u, and there is no electron in that. Essentially, what it amounts to say is that there are 2 electrons which are occupying a bonding molecular orbital there, and presence of 2 electrons essentially refers means existence of a single bond there. Okay. So, since there are 2 electrons in a bonding molecular orbital, essentially there is a single bond between 2 hydrogen atoms, and there is nothing in the antibonding orbital there. So, we can say that a hydrogen molecule is made up of 2 hydrogen atoms which are joined together by a sigma bond. So, that is the simple description of the bonding in hydrogen molecule. Now, let us see the second element here, that is, suppose I want to talk about helium molecule He2. Now, what I find is here again in case of helium also the electron configuration is 1s2. So, there are 2 electrons, essentially the contributing atomic orbitals will be 1s of helium atom number 1 and another 1s of helium atom number 2. The 2 will combine together to give me 2 molecular orbitals, same as in the case of hydrogen molecule ion or hydrogen molecule. But now what we have is we have got 4 electrons. When you fill in these 4 electrons there, we find that 2 are into the bonding molecular orbital there and 2 are in the anti-bonding. We can roughly say that there is a 1 bond and there is 1 anti-bond, so to say. This terminology is not very common, but it can be used. So, when we do that, essentially it amounts to saying that there is no bond formation, because there is 1 bond, something which is leading to lowering of energy or stabilization there, and equivalent or later slightly more than that is a destabilization. So, essentially helium molecule, there is a possibility of forming a helium molecule does not exist according to our molecular orbital theory. So, we can say that according to molecular orbital theory He2 does not exist. Okay. So, that is a kind of description we have for about period 1 elements. Let us move on to the homonuclear diatomic molecules of period 2 elements. Now, when we move to period 2, probably again our strategy will be to construct the appropriate molecular orbitals for that. And the basic premise here is, that is, when we talk about the generating or constructing molecular orbitals, we have to ensure that we are using the orbitals of the valence shell. They are the most pertinent ones there. So, in this case of period 2 elements, the pertinent atomic orbitals which will be contributing to generation of molecular orbitals will be, that is, of the 2s and 2p atomic orbitals. 1s is already taken care of. And second requirement here is, that is, when we combine atomic orbitals to generate molecular orbitals, the atomic orbitals must have appropriate symmetry. So, in our context now, essentially the 2s orbital and the 2pz, they have got similar symmetry. So, they will combine together to give you molecular orbitals, and 2px and 2py will behave slightly differently. We will come to that as we proceed. Okay. Now, let us see here. So, if I look at, say, this is my atom A, this is my atom B. So, they just put A and B just to differentiate between them, otherwise we are talking about homonuclear diatomic molecules, means both atoms are identical. Okay. So, I am taking a generalized picture here. So, for atom A, so the 2s orbital will be there and then 2p z orbital will be there. Here z direction is taken as the molecular direction, that means the direction in which the bond is formed. Okay. So, similarly for B atom also, so there is a 2s orbital of B and then there is a 2pz of B. So, there are 4 atomic orbitals which are going to combine. So, in such a case probably our wave function, the trial wave function will be, say, C1 2s of A, C2 2s of B, C3 2pz of A and C4 2pz of B, where this C1, C2, C3, C4 are the coefficients which are to be found out using an elaborate methods there. We will not get into that, but what you are seeing here is, since we are using 4 atomic orbitals, I will be getting 4 different molecular orbitals there. But probably we can make things slightly easy for ourselves by taking up 2 kinds of cases there. Let us take the case 1, because what happens is, when I am dealing with the elements of period 2, we find that the energies of the 2s orbital and that of 2pz, they are not identical in all the elements there, they are different here. So, case 1 is that where the energies of 2s and 2pz orbitals are quite different. Say, for example, in case of boron, then probably nitrogen, carbon. So, for them these energies are quite different there. If that be so, what happens is, in such cases we can probably consider that the 2s orbitals combine among themselves and 2pz orbitals combine amongst themselves, because the energies are so different that they do not merge with one another. There is no mixing of 2s and 2pz. So, we can, in such a case we can say that the combination of 2s orbitals is like that of the 1s orbitals. So, it will give me 2 molecular orbitals, one will be 2 sigma u and other will be 2 sigma g. We had 1 sigma u and 1 sigma g earlier when we combined 1s orbitals of 2 hydrogen atoms there. Okay. Similarly, we can talk about the combination of 2p z orbitals of atom A and atom B. Here again I will be getting 2 sigma orbitals, one will be bonding, one will be anti-bonding. So, I am getting 4 molecular orbitals which I am expected to get, but they will be in the lots of 2 each. 2 orbitals coming from s orbitals, 2 coming from the combination of 2p z orbitals. Now, when we talk about combination of 2s orbitals, what happens is that is the way we can depict it pictorially, that is, this is atomic orbital, say 2s orbital of atom 1, 2s orbital of atom 2, 1 or 2 or A and B, whatever you want to use there. Now, when these 2 atomic orbitals are there, they can combine constructively or destructively. When they combine constructively, we find that there is a bonding molecular orbital is formed there. That means, we find that there is a electron density in the internuclear region, which is highly increased there. And in the antibonding molecular orbital, we find that the internuclear region, the electron density is diminished extensively. So, the 2 kind of molecular orbitals are formed there. So, that is what I get by combining 2s orbitals of the 2 atoms A and B. That means, essentially I am getting 2 sigma molecular orbitals. Now, they are called sigma molecular orbitals because if you look at along the internuclear axis, we find it is like an s orbital. Okay. So, that is why they are called as sigma molecular orbitals. When I combine 2p z orbitals of the 2 atoms A and B, what I find is, so this is my 2p z orbital of atom 1, say this one first here, and this is the second one. Now, what I find is, what I am trying to show here, that the 2 are kind of combining constructively. That means, you can say the wave function will be simply C1 2p z of A, C2 2p z of B, then C1 C2 are to be determined there. I will not get into that, but just for qualitatively speaking, these 2 atomic orbitals 2p z of atom A and 2p z of atom B, the 2 combine constructively. You can see that the similar color nodes kind of lobes are together. So, they combine, and what you find is that there is a electron density increased on the internuclear region. So, this is a bonding molecular orbital which will come up there. And in this case, when they combine destructively, I mean, you can see that the 2 opposite lobes are there, one is a positive lobe, one is a negative lobe. We find that this internuclear region becomes deficient of electrons. There is an anti-bonding molecular orbital. Okay. So, here again I am going to get 2 sigma molecular orbitals there. So, that is a kind of description, that is a kind of molecular orbital I am getting when I am trying to combine the atomic orbitals of atom A and B, and we are taking a case when there is no mixing of s and p orbitals, because the energies of the s and p are far apart from each other. Okay. Now, if I extend my things further, if I take, let us say 2px orbitals or 2py orbitals of the 2 atoms A and B. Now, in such cases what happens is the combination is not along the internuclear axis, but they are like lateral, sideways overlapping. Let us see how does it happen. Say this is, say 2px orbital of atom 1, this is that of 2, the 2 are combining constructively, similar kind of lobes are together in the same direction, they combine together and we get a bonding molecular orbital there. And on the other hand, when the 2 combine destructively, you find that the opposite lobes are together. So, they will find a formation of an anti-bonding molecular orbital there. One more thing, probably you can make a note here, that is the designation here, because such orbitals which I get by lateral overlap or sideways overlap are called as pi orbital, because if I look at this molecular orbital say along from this direction, say along the internuclear axis, from this side it will look like a p orbital. So, this p in the, if I use p is in Greek alphabets, it will be pi, that is why they are called as pi orbitals there. Second thing we have to make note of here is, that is the designation of this, that means that is the symmetric characteristics of that. This is ungerad, this is gerad, symmetric, this is antisymmetric, because it is in opposition to what we had in case of s orbitals there. You remember that when we made sigma orbitals from combination of 2 s orbitals there, we found that sigma orbital of lower energy, the bonding sigma orbital were of G characteristic, whereas in this case antibonding is G and bonding is U. And the reason for that is That means whether they are symmetric or anti-symmetric. So in this case, we find that if I say this is my center of inversion, if I invert from here to here, I find that the sign of the wave function changes. So it is anti-symmetric, that's why it is U here. Whereas the antibonding molecular orbital happens to be symmetric, because if I invert from here, so from this portion will become here, this will become this side. So this will be a symmetric molecular orbital there. So that's the kind of designation we have for this. Okay. So we have seen that how do we kind of formulate, generate molecular orbitals by combining the suitable atomic orbitals of the two atoms A and B. Now this can be summarized in terms of some kind of a molecular orbital energy level diagram. Say for homonuclear diatomic molecules, without 2s 2pz mixing, the diagram will look something like this, wherein we find that I am just showing the molecular orbitals which are generated by combining the valence electrons. So this is 2s. So 2s of atom A, 2s of atom B, when the two combine together, they give me a sigma orbital here, another sigma star here. This is a bonding molecular orbital, the anti-bonding molecular orbital. Similarly, in this p orbitals there, so there are px, py, pz, all of them are there. So what you find is the pz will combine with the pz here and give me a sigma pz here and sigma star p. Okay. So that means sigma 2p, or there are different kind of notations we have for that. So essentially what I want to focus on is, that is, from the combination of 2pz orbitals for the two atoms, I get two molecular orbitals which are of sigma type. Sigma is more important for me because that overlapping is along the internuclear axis. When I get that, so that is of lower energy there. This is my sigma and this is my sigma star. That is what I get from my 2pz. When 2px and 2py combine, they give me pi orbitals which are got slightly higher energy, and also since px and py will give me the molecular orbitals which will be degenerate. So there are two bonding, this is my pi 2p, this is my pi star 2p. That means these are the bonding molecular orbitals I got, these are anti-bonding there. So we find that there are two each are there, because the px and py are going to give me molecular orbitals of equivalent energy, that is, there will be degenerate there. So this is my molecular orbital energy level diagram there. Okay. Now, so let's see when does it happen that the s orbital and p orbitals can undergo mixing, and then in what way does it change our molecular orbital energy level diagram. Let's see that. Essentially, which is very obvious, that is, s and p orbitals will undergo mixing if their energy are comparable, because in the previous case we saw the energies are very far apart from each other, so they were not mixing with each other. The mixing will come when energies are comparable, and that means one way of looking at it is that if you look at the difference in energies of 2s and 2pz orbitals for different systems, say for boron this value happens to be about 550 kilojoules per mole, whereas for fluorine it happens to be about 1987.6 kilojoules per mole. So I am just taking two examples here. What does it mean? What does it mean is, that is, for fluorine this energy difference is so very large that the S and P mixing will not take place, whereby what will happen for fluorine kind of systems, fluorine or oxygen, we find that the description which we just finished right now, that is the diagram which I showed just prior to this slide, will be operative there. Whereas in case of boron, since this energy difference is very small, it's not very small, it is much smaller than what we have in case of fluorine. So in such cases there is a possibility of mixing of s and p orbitals. As a consequence, what happens is, that is, we can say that the mixing is significant only for small elements of period 2, that is from boron to nitrogen. So for these elements the mixing is likely to be there. This picture gives some kind of a representative account of the energies of different molecular orbitals for different diatomic molecules of period 2. Let us see, say this is the case of fluorine, and the molecular orbital energy level diagram is something parallel to what we just learned here. These are the two molecular orbitals obtained by combination of 2s orbitals of the two atoms here. Now this is the one which I got from the combination of 2pz, that is a sigma orbital here. Then these are the two pi orbitals there, and this is a pi star, and this is my sigma star, say 2p, what I get from 2pz. Now, when I go to smaller elements there, when I move from fluorine to oxygen to nitrogen and so on and so forth, if I go to smaller elements, what I find is, as I just mentioned, in that case the delta E values, the energies of the 2s orbital and 2pz orbital are not very far from each other, whereby the two atomic orbitals, these two orbitals can come mixed with one another. As a consequence, what happens is the energies of the sigma orbital here, this orbitals start increasing, and what I find is, say for fluorine this is the value here, for oxygen it is slightly larger here. When I come to nitrogen, we find that it crosses over that of the pi orbitals there. For if I go further down, this energy level goes on increasing there. This is the place where there is a transition taking place. Now, what it means? What it means is that for these two kind of molecules, oxygen and fluorine, there is a one kind of a energy level diagram we can think of, and then filling of electrons is a later part of it. But when I talk about nitrogen, C2, FB2, BE2 or Li2, I have to use different kind of a molecular orbital energy level diagram. So, that means essentially to deal with these period 2 elements, I need two kind of molecular orbital energy level diagrams. Let us go further a little. So, this is the schematic molecular orbital energy level diagram, wherein there is a mixing. You can see there now. So, this portion is similar to what we had before. What I am showing here is that this portion becomes slightly altered here. Even this also is changed from the previous case, because in that case this energy was much larger. Now, what happens is this energy is decreased here, but that of this energy level has gone up. So, it was earlier somewhere here, now it has gone above this, and then this is a small change here too. So, essentially what it amounts to saying is that there are two kind of molecular orbital energy level diagrams which we have to make use of, one for the lighter elements, one for the heavier elements like oxygen and fluorine. Okay, let us put the two together. So, this is the one for the heavier elements there, this is the one for the lighter elements. Okay, you can see now, you can contrast the two, you can see that the energy of this has decreased, and here again this orbital has got energy to be somewhere here. So, that is a kind of differentiation coming as a consequence. This is the consequence of mixing of s and p orbitals. Okay. Now, I am sure that all these things, something similar to this has been done by you at your school level. So, I am not getting into details of to write the molecular orbital electron configuration of all kind of molecules. You know how to do that, but what is important is, so I am just trying to re-emphasize here, that is for lighter elements, say B2, C2, N2, I am going to use a given kind of molecular orbital energy level diagram, and for heavier elements O2, F2 and Ne2 if possible, I have to use a different kind of a arrangement there. And then, as I mentioned earlier, that means when I am filling electrons into these molecular orbitals, I have to adhere to the Pauli's principle and also Hund's principle, and I just fill in the electrons. So, these are there. So, that is a kind of molecular orbital electronic configurations for different molecules or diatomic molecules of period 2. Now, again here I will like you to just focus on one bit, that is somewhere here. What you find is, in case of O2, because of this electronic configuration, we find that when I fill electrons, when I am filling electrons into these two molecular orbitals which are degenerate. So, I have to invoke Hund's principle. When I do that, I have to put electrons singly into these molecular orbitals, and this single kind of an occupancy of the two molecular orbital has a very important practical bearing. The practical bearing on experimental bearing on this is that because there are unpaired electrons, this oxygen molecule happens to be paramagnetic in nature. That is what is experimentally observed. So, molecular orbital theory provides a kind of an explanation for experimental observation that oxygen happens to be paramagnetic. So, this paramagnetism actually is, you can see there, suppose I got two magnetic poles with you, and then if I take liquid oxygen and pour through that, it will not just go down, it will be held between the two magnetic poles there. because of its paramagnetism. That is an experimental fact, and this fact can be explained only on the basis of molecular orbital theory. That is one big success of molecular orbital theory, because according to valence bond theory, which we will talk about later, we cannot have this kind of explanation, and earlier the older classical theories also were inadequate in explaining this experimental observation. Okay. So, I think that is all I wanted to share with you on the molecular orbital theory, and let us sum up what we have done. What we have done today is that we briefly reviewed the contents of the previous sessions. Thereafter, we recalled the salient features of MOT in what we learned in the context of hydrogen molecule ion, because that was pertinent here. Thereafter, we described the generation of molecular orbitals for homonuclear diatomic molecules of period 2, wherein we saw that how do different atomic orbitals combine to give the molecular orbitals. Thereafter, we discussed the kind of molecular orbital energy level diagrams we obtain in the case of homonuclear diatomic molecules, wherein there is a mixing of 2s and 2p, and the second case was when there is no mixing, that means with and without mixing of 2s and 2p orbitals. And thereafter, we briefly touched upon that when I fill electrons into these molecular orbital energy levels, that what kind of molecular orbital electronic configurations are obtained, and the success of molecular orbital theory lies in the fact that it is able to account for the experimental observation of oxygen being paramagnetic in nature. Now, I think that is all probably we need to talk about molecular orbital theory. In the next session, we will take up valence bond theory. We will learn about valence bond